All right, just making sure you guys can still hear me. Wonderful. Excellent. All right. Well, welcome guys to Innovative Heights Risk Management 2023. We kicked off the year with this. We found it to be such an important topic. We needed to have it front and center at the beginning of our year, because what are we doing if we're not ensuring that risk management's happening in our parks? It's such a huge part of our business. And so it will continue to be for the year and beyond, right? Making sure that we are really honed in on risk management. And there's been a number of changes even in the last little while here. I had to make some edits. So even February is somewhat outdated from what you're going to get today. Now, these little minor changes, and in some cases not minor changes, will be reflected here, and where things are still remaining somewhat dynamic, somewhat fluid. Well, we reserve the right here at Innovative Heights to make those changes. But when those if we do have some amended changes there, or just some changes in general, we'll of course communicate that out to y'all so that you have it. So what is risk management? By definition in business, it's the forecasting and evaluation of financial risks, together with the identification of procedures to avoid or minimize their impact. That's a lengthy definition. I would say, simply put, risk management is a combination of training, processes, and systems designed to mitigate loss and minimize liability within our business around incidents, right? And so that will be the focus today. A little different from our other Leadership Equipped calls. This was our February Leadership Equipped call. Less interactions in the sense of me asking a lot of questions, trying to get answers, or even like this last call we did, role plays having happen on that call. It's more of a download, but it doesn't make it any less important. So I will try to, I've always tried to spruce these calls up so they're a little bit more enjoyable. Risk management can kind of be a dry subject. However, it's a very important one. So please stay as focused in on this as possible. Ask questions as they come up. There's essentially 4 sections of this call, and there's a place to ask questions at the end of each of these sections. So you'll know when that time is. So what is your comfort level with risk management? If 10 is, I feel like I've mastered it, I'm super comfortable with it, give it a 10, right? 5, sort of middle of the road, you know, hey, I'm all right with it, but not really all that comfortable in certain areas of it, give it a 5 or somewhere around there. And then 1 is, well, what is risk management? What am I doing here? So if you could just give a 1 through a 10, you don't have to vocalize it here, but if you can just put that in the chat, that would be super helpful just for us to kind of look at a later time, especially after the quiz is done, which there will be a quiz. There'll be a link for that. It's a Google form. You won't do it live with us here, but you will do it shortly after the call wraps up. So 1 through 10, 10 being you've mastered it or you're near mastering it, 5 somewhere in the middle of the road, 1, what is risk management? Would appreciate you giving that. Awesome. All right. So who here enjoys flying? Would love to hear from you. Unmute yourself. I know, Kevin, you're a pro flyer. You grew up on planes, especially with a mom in the in the flight industry, flying airplanes all the time. Who here enjoys flying? 1 or 2 of you.
Yeah, I definitely do. Like you said, my mom was a flight attendant for 45 years for United. So done the whole standby thing for many, many years.
Awesome. Awesome. Anyone else love flying? Or maybe it's the opposite. You have a fear of flying, right? You don't do it a whole lot. And if you have to, it's filled with anxiety. Anyone else? Because there's always one.
I enjoy it. I think it's a really fun experience. And do I have 12 seconds to add something a flight attendant said once? It was very impactful. And it applies. She said, "You may have flown before, but you've never flown with me. So I need your attention for this video or these instructions."
Excellent. Yeah. I'm sure that got everyone's focus, right? Excellent. One thing I heard about flying many years ago was The moment you realize the turbulence is just part of the ride, it becomes more like a roller coaster. Just sit back and relax and enjoy it, versus it being problematic or an issue. It's just part of flying. And so that was something I really took in, because early on, I did not necessarily enjoy it all that much. A lot of anxiety, a lot of stress. And now I fly, not all the time, but often enough where I'm much more comfortable than I formerly was. So I asked that question because there'll be some parallels as we go through risk management. We all know, though, flying, even if you're somewhat nervous with it, if you really think about it, flying is far safer than driving, and we drive all the time. But maybe we don't think that way, even though statistically it's true, because we drive a whole lot more. And so we're comfortable with driving, even though it's inherently more risky, because maybe we don't fly as often, right? So comfort levels rise when we do things more often. There's more knowledge at hand, and we're just familiar with it, right? And so same thing with risk management. We want to become more familiar with this area, so we have heightened levels of comfort, so that we can actually do this thing called risk management in our parks that much more effectively. So just the stats go, 1 in 1.2 million will be in an accident of some sort when it comes to flying. However, 1 in 11 million will be fatal. So it's very rare that you'll be in an accident. It's even that much more rare that you'll actually have a fatal accident. Not that you want to be in an accident while in air. Well, 1 in 11 million will be fatal. That should help you feel a little bit better about being in flight. Whereas driving a car, well, 1 in 5,000 will die in a car crash. So not so much just people driving, it's just being in a car. 1 in 5,000 will die in a car crash. And these stats are relatively recent, as of last fall. So again, flying is that much more safe. All right, planes are designed to stay in the air as billions of dollars are at stake. Whether United, as Kevin was mentioning, doesn't matter, Southwest, Delta, so much of their industry is based, yes, on convenience, getting you to and from places in a much quicker way. I mean, I take 44-minute flights to Milwaukee. It beats the 6.5 to 8 hour drive around Lake Michigan through Illinois and all that just to get to the Wisconsin area. And so I prefer flying. Why? Because I get a lot more of my own time back. It's more convenient. And lately, at times, it's even economically a better go than renting a car and driving. However, most important to the airplane industry, the flight industry, is that people get to and from safely. That has to be at the very top of importance, because at the end of the day, if a plane doesn't get to where it's supposed to go, billions of dollars are at stake. It's an entire industry. This is a quote that I use relatively often in my parks. Historically, I've used it now for, well, I don't know, a handful of years, especially as it goes to risk management. Rarely is it one singular issue that brings down an airplane, but many small issues in a short period of time that overcome the multiple fail-safes in place. These issues compound and create something catastrophic. Things tend to stack, and in relatively short order. There will be multiple decisions being made, and they're happening at a quick pace. I use this parallel with things as it goes to parks and risk management, right? It's these little things that stack up over time. It's things that have been bypassed, looked over, pencil whipping exercises, whatever it may be. We've just looked past it. We've looked beyond it. And these areas will become fail-safes that have come down, and we may have something catastrophic happen even in our business. So it's important that we really focus in and realize we have all these fail-safes. They're in place for a reason. Let's never just bypass them or press beyond them or lose our focus when it comes to risk management. Similar to planes falling out of the sky, although they're designed to stay in the sky, same thing with risk management. We have lots of stuff in place to keep guests safe in our parks. So establishing safe, fun, and enjoyable experiences for all guests at all times. That's what we're going to do here on the call today, because that is Innovative Heights Risk Management. Key objectives: set the standard for risk management in all parks. We really want to reduce any blurriness in the area of gray area of activity. Hey, when you don't know, right, you just have to kind of guess your way through something. That's not something we want to have happen in our parks. And back to bullet point number 1, when I say set the standard for risk management in all parks, it's really important that although we're pulling from areas of our ops guide in the world or our risk guide in the world of Sky Zone, many of those things, and where they don't agree with what we do in Slick City, we have added little asterisks and little notations, because it's important to us at Innovative Heights, and I believe I can speak on behalf of the entire company when I say this, that Sky Zone and Slick City, they shake hands whenever, wherever possible, that we are the same whenever possible, different when only necessary. So we want to set the standard for risk management in all parks, both Sky Zone and Slick City. The third bullet point, equip managers to be more comfortable with risk management. That's really important. Whether you are a day one manager or you've been around for a long time, just getting comfortable with that and being equipped fully, and then run safer parks. That guests coming through our parks that are looking to have a great time, they leave just the same, so they can tell their friends to come out to Slick City or Sky Zone because they had an incredible time. How it all connects. I view this much like a puzzle, and so there's 4 sections largely being communicated in our time together today. Much like a puzzle, these pieces must come together. So risk lens will be the first thing we talk about. That's probably the most dense area of this, and for good reason. It's a lot of the stuff we do before an incident ever occurs, right? Because it's that prior planning, so we can have the kind of performance out of our parks to be safer parks. We'll talk about incident response, incident reporting, and then the overall follow-up piece, which will be a shorter piece on our end. But much like a puzzle, as we all know, when we have a piece missing, well, the whole thing falls apart. And I was just thinking about this morning as I was reviewing my slides, because it's been a minute since I've been in front of them. Even if you had all the pieces together, say you have one piece of a puzzle where the sides are curled up, maybe a liquid, fell on it. The image of it's a little bit blurrier. When you stand afar from that puzzle, even though it's complete, if there's a part of the puzzle that is somehow misshapen, malformed, whatever it may be, it's going to affect the greater picture that we're trying to present, in this case, risk management. So we can't have any fuzziness on any one area. And my goal, one of my few goals I have on this call, is to ensure that there's less gray area activity, as I mentioned on the prior slide, but that all of y'all are more comfortable having been on this call. So risk management, the first thing with Risk Lens, and this is just a high-level view for right now, is creating a workplace environment that not only views but acts with processes, systems, and training to minimize and mitigate risk potential. This is where risk management starts. Number 2, incident response. Incidents will occur in the park. How we react in the seconds to minutes that follow an incident can prove to be vital to risk mitigation and controlling potential to the company. Incident reporting. Following the guest being taken care of. The event must be fully captured. This is to be accurate, timely, and contain factual details to account for proper reporting and internal communication. And then follow up. What can occur after the following of an incident? A number of potentials exist, and knowing how to navigate them is paramount to our risk management success. So first and foremost, we must develop a risk lens. This is very important. I liken this to, when I think of risk lens, it's like the glasses you wear when the sun's creeping up from behind the clouds, and what do? You reach over for your sunglasses. Just doing that impacts the way you perceive and yet also interact with your environment. Imagine, if you will, you're getting up bright and early, and it's not yet bright, but it is early. As the sun creeps up, like I mentioned, you're driving and you happen to be coming right into contact with the sun, kind of coming up over the clouds. It cuts right through the windshield, right? And it impacts your ability to see, which ultimately impacts your way of driving, right? Because how you see things interacts with how you do things. That's how it goes, right? So having that risk lens, or in the case of my analogy here, grabbing those sunglasses in that moment, and say you don't have sunglasses, you may have to change the visor, move things around. You might be kind of doing one of these, squinting. You're seeing things differently, much the same as with risk lens. We have to have our lenses on at all times, right? So risk lens is critical so that we can run our parks well. So what's within a risk lens? I'll explain. First and foremost, though, Murphy's Law. This is a law that many of you already know, that anything that can go wrong will go wrong. It's not something we're excited about. It's just reality. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. When thinking about our parks, though, where does Murphy live? If I can just get one or two of you to kind of explain to me where, and to the group really, where does Murphy live in our parks?
Over
Everywhere. Everywhere. I love it. I love it. Well, let's find out if you're right. Frayne zipline cables. That's a place where Murphy's lives. Gaps and pads, watchdogs that maybe are not plugged in or dusty, not cleaned out. We're talking about gaps and holes and nets coming apart. We're talking about nets maybe not attached properly, wet floors, gaps and nets, more gaps, places where feet can go. Yes, you're right. Anywhere and everywhere, that's where Murphys live. Now, if this call were to end right now, you may feel a sense of doom and gloom. Hopelessness may abound, but hey, fear not. We're going to continue on, and there are plenty of things we have at our disposal to ensure that our guests are jumping safely with us and that Murphy's stays where it's supposed to. Although it's anywhere and everywhere, we're going to counter everything that Murphy's has to offer us with what we have at our disposal, which is many, many things. So wrist lens, this is a little lengthy of a area here. And I'll just try to do more of a high level, but this will be made available for you. Inspections must be happening, right? So we do equipment checks, and that's one of the most important aspects of maintaining park safety. Every day, you should have a team member that is completing daily maintenance checklist items. In the Skies World, that is through Limble. Throughout the day, a wild cleaner supervising the facility before and after park hours. The team member must spot check the equipment. So even when you have an action monitor or a court monitor, they are another layer. They're another level of our risk management. This is part of having a risk lens. When they see the business, they see the park, they're running a dodgeball game or they're running a slide, and they see something that looks out of form, out of whack, they should be communicating that, right? They should be noticing that, whether that's a strap that's untied, if you're talking about a court, or maybe an area in which people aren't sliding properly, right? They should be noting that. And that's part of that inspection. And that's just daily. That's every single day. Obviously, we have formal check-ins for that are daily, weekly, and monthly. And we just kind of stay focused on that as well. Maintenance reports are a big part of the GM's accountability and must be taken seriously. This is not pencil whipping, right? Anything and everything that we put down, pen and paper, or even in the case of something digital like Limble, or anything that's being reported through Jolt or PlayerLink, which I'll get to here in a moment, that's all discoverable evidence. And when I say that, that means that's items that can be subpoenaed. They can be brought into a court of law. These are checks that we have done. And so if something were to escalate through risk management, say an incident goes to litigation, we may have to, or in that case, we will have to send over those materials. And so it's really important that if someone's checking something, that they're actually checking it, because at some point they may have to speak to what they checked, and the level of intentionality and just real performance on their end, and just being thorough with their checks, right? So it's not a pencil whipping exercise. It never can be. We got to stay focused on it. Equipment experts, this is a best practice, a pro tip, if you will. Having someone who's really focused on this. Typically, this is a maintenance individual in the park, a single trained expert to perform all the weekly and monthly equipment checks. I believe in kind of layering that in our parks, where it's not just one, but it's a couple, right? And there's kind of a point of escalation there. But that individual, they see this stuff every single day, and they understand the wear and tear. They know it, they've seen it, and they can look for things that may change over time and be able to respond to it through the management ranks within the park. So who is responsible for risk management at your park? Anyone know? Who's responsible?
Everyone.
Boom. That may be the key answer on this entire call. Everyone. And that's absolutely true. Everyone is responsible for risk management at the park. Now, everyone's responsible, and yet not everyone's accountable for the same items within the risk management lens, right? Everyone has a different part to play, which we'll get to here in just a moment. So park positions that impact team members, right? From sales to maintenance team, every position at Innovative Heights impacts risk management, from whether guests have a waiver, whether or not they should even be up on a slide or up on a court at the time in which they are, right? This is something team members do every day, from wet floor signs needed to be put down, reporting that there's a spill, or maybe there's even a tripping hazard out in the parking lot that they noted when they walked in from, say a break they were taking out in the parking lot. Team members play a vital part in impacting risk management. MOD, BGL, right? Ensuring that training is reflected into daily execution across the staff. Ongoing training as well. On the scene during incident response. General manager oversees risk management training, process, and accuracy with systems for location. And then above park leadership, responsible for risk management consistency across multiple locations and for follow-up with Ideal 3, which I'll talk a little bit more about them as we progress through these slides. Tools and systems that work for us. Don't you love having tools and systems, right? We're not having to scribe this on stone. We have systems that keep us honest and keep us on point and record what we do. So we have Limble in the world of SkyZone for our inspections. Jolt and PlayerLink. Jolt in the Slick City world, PlayerLink on the SkyZone side of the business where we do our incident reporting. Communication channels like, well, park alerts, which we'll talk about a little further. And of course, items like WhatsApp, where we have com chats that go through. Maybe it's a guest calling in about an issue, whatever it may be. We can communicate that effectively through WhatsApp. And then 12 systems. Where would we be without 12 systems? There's an entire letter that's tied back to just risk management. But just don't go there. There's other layers of our 12 systems that speak to day in, day out risk management. Risk lens further. Waivers are required, and I will just kind of focus on the highlighted portions here while still talking to these other areas. Slick City policy, all guests require a waiver, including observers. Whereas in SkyZone world, it's really a glow policy that all guests require a waiver, including observers as well. We knew signing waivers must be 18 years or older. Guests under the age of 18 must have a waiver signed by a parent or legal guardian. Duration of waivers, paper waivers, when and where they're used, although not used frequently, they're only valid for 24 hours. And kind of moving through here, guys, we never hand out a copy of a waiver without a court summons. That's come up a number of times in the last year or two. It's really important that that's not being handed out. That is an internal document. Once it's signed, it's kind of brought over. That is not something we give out, and that's with a court summons when and where we do. CAV model.
Quick question.
Yes. Yes.
After they fill out the waiver, they are emailed a copy of it, aren't they?
Yes, there's a copy that goes through. That's correct.
Okay.
I mean, I'm speaking on behalf of Slick City, but I know in the world of SkyZone, I get a copy. Is that true, Wade?
It's true. Yep, they do. And Slick City's on roller as officially today. So
nice, awesome. Rolling on in.
Hand out blank paper or blank waivers? Is that something that's allowed? I've been asked that in the past, and I didn't see, and this was a minute ago. I don't have any on hand at this point, but like just blank ones. Is that something that's allowed?
You want to answer that? Or you want me to, Lance?
You're talking about the blank paper waiver. You can go ahead and answer that. I was thinking about blank paper waivers for a moment.
Yeah. So if you give out a paper waiver, we want to be electronic 100% if we can, because it is a legal document. And if you have a paper waiver, you have to save it into what's the word? Perpetuity, which means you have, from a legal standpoint, you have to hang on to that forever, which means you have to file it. Everybody's got to know where it's at. You got to pass that information along to, whatever. So we always say do electronic.
Yeah, but like if they've done the electronic and they ask for a copy of it, and let's say it doesn't go to their email for whatever reason, I'm asking if I could just hand them a blank paper one, not to fill out per se, but to have.
Like a copy of their waiver?
A copy of a waiver without them filling it out. Like,
oh, you're talking
okay. Before, yeah.
I suppose you could. I mean, they can access it online because they're, they can screenshot it and take, whatever. So
Right.
there's nothing there to hide. But yeah, I don't think that would be a problem. Obviously, they have to still complete it in order to participate in the event. If they say, I don't agree with this section of the waiver, so I'm going to cross it out and sign it, whatever, say, I'm sorry, then I guess you can't jump because you have to sign the whole waiver.
Right. Just thought I'd ask.
Yep, good question.
No, it's a great question. And I guess for me, what sounds the alarm in my ear when I hear that is someone that did have an issue at the park, say an incident of some sort, and now they're trying to collect that on their end so they can kind of look through it or whatever. I'm seeing that on the opposite side. Someone's already kind of jumped with us, right? And they want to reference back to that. So if anything, that would raise an alert on my end to say, let me see if I can get their name again and see if there was some sort of issue, some sort of visit, right, that they had, and maybe an incident that was filed at some point, maybe months ago, right? It just seems kind of odd to ask that if they've already jumped with us. And if they haven't, then I get why they might ask for that. But yeah, long gone are the days way back when you give that paper waiver out and you'd have people literally crossing things out and, amending it. They would be changing it. It's like, you can't do that, right? So much like Wade said, when and wherever, let's be digital. It's 2023. So awesome.
Little I guess, fun fact or information. When we put the Slick City there in Chesterfield, they literally had thousands and thousands of waivers and boxes that were in the storeroom in the back. It was unbelievable because back in the day, everything was paper waiver.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. True to form. Yeah, that's how it used to be. So awesome. And great questions, everyone. There will be a section of kind of asking questions too, just as a reminder at the end of each section. No harm, no foul, and no big deal. So awesome. All right, CAV model won't focus on this a whole lot, but it is here for a reason, largely because when this was first introduced in many a park, and this is more of a Sky Zone terminology, but I'm sure it's used elsewhere. CAV is an acronym for coverage, accountability, and visibility. And for those parks that didn't really properly understand it and or deploy it in the right way, which usually kind of goes hand in hand, this was seen more as a lean, mean, labor-intensive model, which was sort of an excusing away of proper coverage of courts, which is odd in and of itself because the first letter is coverage. But the gist of it is having minimal coverage in the sense of, body count on the court in the way of an action monitor or court monitor. However, you still have to be able to see everywhere at all times. And so the coverage piece is you're going to see everything. You're working with minimal staffing levels. They are still truly accountable for all areas of the park or the section that they've been given, rather. And then visibility, making sure they're properly positioned. This is something that a manager, the BGL at the time, can really stay focused on, is making sure that, hey, say for instance at a freestyle court, I would rather have, Johnny Court Monitor, which I always go back to Johnny, position maybe in the corner where he can kind of see out into maybe a rectangular freestyle court section, right? Versus being maybe dead center and having to kind of pivot. And then there's these blind spots, right? And so you must always have visibility. Someone must always be accountable to a set area, and we always have to have 100% coverage. So although it's a minimal staffing model, it's really about positioning to ensure that we're still covered across the board, across the park. And that's the CAV model. Signs, everywhere sign. And, I realize that there are signs on here that have nothing to do with this, or seemingly, we got Defy on here. This is pulled from the Sky Zone Risk Management Manual or Circus Tricks at the time. But they look very familiar, right? Because in many cases, the language is identical. We need to know the rules. We know people don't read signs, but we must have them posted nonetheless. Probably most important to this, though, is that our people know the rules. I can count it well beyond my two hands over the years where I had somebody that I walked up to in the way of a court monitor, that's the Sky Zone world, would be action monitor in the Slick City world, walking up to them and noting that they themselves are not instructing on behalf of the rules. One of my examples I give all the time is walking up to a park where a court monitor was tending to the zip line, trapeze, and swing. That's an aerial attraction set up at a Sky Zone park. and people were going down the zip line incorrectly. Now, this gentleman who was running the court area, the attraction area there, was working the trapeze and the swing and just kind of letting things happen behind him. And these guests were just doing all sorts of crazy things. But if it wasn't just for that, he had a blind eye. Even when he was looking at what they were doing, he wasn't making any corrections. And why? Why after 6 months of working at Sky Zone was he just not making any corrections? Because he didn't know the rules himself. I pointed out the sign. I said, you do know the sign says you can't do X, Y, and Z. He looked at it and said, I guess I've never read that sign. Now, first and foremost, we should have trained him properly before ever putting him in that position. But second to that, as a pro tip, when there are lulls in a shift during a day, getting your people to read the signs that they are meant to enforce, that's why they're there. They should know the signs, right? So pro tip, best practice with training our team, have them read the signs at the areas that they're stationed at. Safety meetings. We don't necessarily have formal safety meetings. However, there should always be a safety component in our once a month team member meetings that we have and our once a week to once every 2 weeks leadership meetings that we have in park. And so the safety meeting piece does look different depending on what we're talking about here. In the month meeting that we have with our team members, it won't be necessarily getting into the nitty gritty of, say, an incident that occurred in the park. However, it might be highlighting areas that are friction points for our guests, areas of concern, areas that are sort of notable sections where maybe more injuries are happening. For instance, if people are coming down on the inside of their ankles, they're getting double bounced in the world of, Sky Zone. Maybe that's because we're not doing one jumper per square and it's an area of focus. That might be something you bring up during your safety meeting portion within the team member meeting that you do once a month. With leadership meetings, though, that's a great time to dive into incidents at a higher level or a more intimate level, talking through just sort of what happened, what we could have done differently, and really reflecting on just how things are honestly going within the park. So there should always be a safety meeting component in either one of those meetings every single time. Implementing a risk lens. And this is sort of the last piece of the risk lens portion of our time together. Really, it's about recognizing risk, guys. We talked a lot about that preliminary stuff you can do to recognize risk. Then it's thorough training, really training their eyes to see. Accurate inspections, really filling this out with integrity and doing it with a level of thoroughness. And then ongoing learning, always remaining teachable, always looking to how things are changing within our business, and then interacting with it, yes, but also reacting when needed. Any questions on risk lens? Any questions? All right. And if at some point something comes up, we'll have other portions and other times where we'll ask questions. I'll say any questions. And if it's from an earlier section, that's more than fine.
Lance, sorry, I do have one quick question.
Sure.
If Limble is ever down for whatever reason, is there paper copies of inspections located somewhere?
That's a great question. I don't think I have anything on my end, but that would be easy to procure and obtain because we definitely need to have something. I mean, we haven't had large swaths of time without Limble. But I don't, and maybe Wade can answer this better. I don't have a PDF or some sort of paper-based version of that at my disposal.
Yeah, I can answer that question. So in a case like that, say they were down, the way Limble works, as many of you know, if the inspection's not done, it sits there until it is completed. So in a case like that, you could do the inspection, even if you just kind of like, I've done so many of these, I kind of know what to do, you walk around and do it. And then you could go back and fill it in, say the next day. And then there's a section that you just make a note that Limble was down, completed on such and such a date, but inputted on this date kind of thing. And then I'll drop in the chat here. If you ever do have any issues with Limble, there is, I think it's limblehelp@skyzone.com, whatever, but I'll drop it in the chat message here.
Yeah. Yep. Better answer than I had. So I appreciate that. That's awesome. And yes, there's something about if we capture it the day of, we have a paper-based copy, at least from a discoverable evidence standpoint, we did our part. But yeah, if the system's down, much like Wade said, it will remind you in the days to come that something's been quote for quote missed, right? And we got to get after it, which we've all seen at some point or another. So yeah, great question and great answer. Awesome. Anyone else on Wristlands?
Is there a daily or weekly air court limbo at all?
You know, I haven't seen
Good
the
question.
airport on that. Great question. Great question.
I'll find out.
Okay.
Wonderful. That's great. Absolutely. That's a good one. Absolutely. Sometimes we move so fast and we add to our parks, and even I'm writing down reminders to make sure I get the last couple slides on Limbo for Grand Rapids. So yeah, I mean, they got their other 2 slides that they've been operating, but yeah, it's a great question. Excellent. Love it. Anyone else? Anyone else? Excellent. Excellent. All right, guys. And again, if something comes up, make sure to chime in when the any questions comes back up here a little bit later. So incident response, we will not be reading through all that little fine print there. That's a one-pager, kind of a one-stop shop that's available to everyone on this call. And I will make it available. There are some edits and some modifications I need to make, but that is a nice sheet to have. As it says down below, available for download and print. Just a step-by-step of how we truly report incidents. Like I said, there are some changes I need to make. Best practice pro tip would be to print it, laminate it, have it posted in your office space area. That way, you know, you can run to it, you can look to it, and your managers can look to it as well. So in terms of incident levels, and this is where we've seen some changes as of recently, we have level greens, yellows, reds, and severe reds. A level green would be a minor injury where a guest continues their activity after a few minutes of rest or is able to return but opts not to do so. Example would be an ankle roll, trampoline burn, that sort of thing, a dodgeball to the face. A level yellow would be guest could not return to jumping after the incident and may require further medical attention from a licensed medical practitioner. Example would be moderate arm, leg injury, ankle sprain, that sort of thing. Level red, severe injury requiring immediate medical attention. Example would be possible broken bones, lack of consciousness, EMS response. And then level severe red, any head or neck trauma, spine or back injury, paralysis, or fatality. Now, where we've seen some edits and where we've seen some changes. It wasn't all that long ago, we would say a level green would be 1 week. In fact, it wasn't all that long ago that it was available to us in the world of SkyZone on PlayerLink. This was back in March, and before we could put this in PlayerLink as a green. It's no longer available there. We don't report on greens, so to speak, in the world of PlayerLink. However, Innovative Heights, and again, this may morph and change in the days to come, it is our best practice to still recognize a green. Why? Because a green can become a yellow, as some of us have seen, and a yellow can become a red. So there'll be more information on this. We still want to report on greens. We can go the paper-based route for now, but we really want to kind of get away from that. And so Wade and I were talking even up to about a half hour ago about having some sort of Google form or something we fill out that is a replacement for not having that now in our PlayerLink at our disposal. So more on that to come. We want to stay focused. I think a Wristlands requires of us to even look to the level greens as potential yellows, right? So again, 1 week still. Right now would be paper-based, but we will, in short order, come up with something that will facilitate greens in our park in lieu of not having it on PlayerLink in the world of SkyZone. Level yellows, that is within 24 hours. We must get after it within that 24-hour period. There's a level of detective work, which we'll get to here in a moment. We want to have accurate information. And it takes a lot to get there, right? But that's a short window of time, and that's with the yellow. It's even shorter, though, with level reds. It used to be 24 hours. Now it's really preferred that it's on the shift that it started. And there's a lot of benefit to that. And there are some, well, to be honest with you, there could be some struggles with that as well, and even some areas of concern if we're not reporting things accurately, factually, and thoroughly, right? So level reds are as soon as possible, preferably on the shift in which it happened, right? Starting manager for that report is the concluding manager. Long gone are the days that it goes 24 hours, which often looked like, I don't know, 28, 36, 48. We need to have that reported as soon as possible. And I'll get to why that is. And so there's a tension here to do it within that measure of time. I know on a Saturday that can be very difficult. We're very busy, especially during our more challenging months, the seasons in which we're that much busier, right? Winter, what we just came out of. But it's as soon as possible, and I'll give a better sightline as to why. And it has everything to do with follow-up, and I'll get to that here in a moment. CARE program. It's an acronym that stands for Control, Assess, React, and Empathy. C-A-R-E, CARE. And this is a way in which we respond to incidents. We'll dive into it a little further. So control. Take control of the situation, including making space and taking charge. Call attention to clear area. Notify the park manager or shift lead via walkie-talkie. It's important to have your ears on at all times. The park manager will take charge of injury response, managing the injury, and handling the incident reporting. Stop guests from entering the area and direct them away from the incident. One team member should remain with the guests. Other team members should remain at their stations. Always show compassion and concern. They are our guests, right? And during those times of heightened emotion, concern for one's child, if it's a parent to a child or someone's spouse, whoever may be injured and whoever is responding to it in those moments matter, and how we react to it. Well, this is why it's called CARE. Do not admit any guilt or wrongdoing. And this is a big one. We lead with CARE, we show control, and even with E, it's empathy at the back end of this program, but we can never admit guilt or wrongdoing, not leading with an apology, right? Even though in our human instinct is say, I want to apologize, just out of, kindness, right? I'm sorry that happened or whatever. That can be seen as an area in which someone could dig in and suggest for even a moment that we're liable as a result of, well, what are you apologizing for? So do not admit any guilt or wrongdoing, which we'll expand on here a little further. Assess the situation.
Okay. You need a paper towel? That's okay. Thank you.
Oh, all right. Nope, you're not muted. Assess the situation and ensure no other injury potential exists and that the guest is as comfortable as possible. Block up the area as best as possible. Business should remain as usual for the rest of the park. Once the guest is stable, understand what happened and the level of severity. React. There's a lot here, and I know that. And this isn't even an exhaustive list of everything we have at our disposal. We can get to the nitty-gritty offline in our park trainings, but this is, again, the react component of CARE. Take appropriate action. Contact their parent or legal guardian, or immediately call 911 if requested by the guest, or if necessary, based on the injury. Provide first aid kit items to the guest as needed. Rest, ice compression, and elevation, otherwise known as RICE, is very helpful here. It's often the most efficient thing we have at our disposal as first aid measures for minor injuries. The AED, first aid, and BBP, blood-borne pathogen kit, should be available at every park for use by the park manager. Preferably do not touch or physically assist an injured guest. This is really important. Why? Because if you're in the World of Sky Zone and our team members wear that orange, the moment that orange wearing team member touches a guest, it could be seen as they were a part of the problem, not the solution, right? It now becomes, yes, they got injured in the park, and then your team member touching them, right, moving them around or whatever, actually contributed to further injuring of the guest. And so in some circumstances, if the guest asks for help or gives consent, the team member can help escort the guest to a safe area. In this case, should be a manager, right? Managers can do this when needed, but if anyone's ever done incident reporting or incident training with me, I will tell you this. One of the first things we do when we come up on an incident is we say, are you hurt? Can you get up? Is there anyone here to assist you, right? And so that's the escalation piece. Recognizing if someone's down, are you hurt? What they say there, right? They say yes. That's the case. Is anyone available to assist you? And then, of course, responding to that in such a way to say, is there anyone here? And if there's not, then we got to take action. Do not touch guests with head, neck, spine injuries, except for in life-saving measures. It is not the responsibility of any team member or park manager to provide emergency medical care. Leave it to the healthcare professionals.
Did you want it mixed or just a blue raspberry?
Lance, you can mute Maya on your end.
I know I'm just trying to run the presentation at the same time. So let me do this here. 1 second.
There you go.
Gotcha. Awesome. I want it mixed, by the way. All right, cool. Mix is always the way to go. All
Superman.
right, empathy.
Thinking of Superman.
Sometimes with empathy, you give an icy, right? Sometimes that helps with those level 1s, or back in the day, level greens. So, or now the greens. Empathy, to check on the welfare of guests and ensure their family knows that we care about them. To noting information concerning the incident, the prognosis, and the situation. And new to this, red and severe red incidents. It may not be new to you if you've never been on this call and you're relatively new to what we do, but all outgoing calls to injured within the 24-hour window or as soon as possible reporting of an incident will be handled by Ideal 3 to create congruency amongst parks across brands, right? In this case, across all of Sky Zone. And so this is specific to Sky Zone. In the way of red and severe reds, they're going to actually have outgoing calls being made by someone else. In this case, Ideal 3. That's why that window is so tight, because they are reaching out on our behalf, where formerly it was an above park leader like myself reaching out to the guests on those reds. With that being said, though, we need to do this in an accurate and factual fashion, not rushing things to the finish line, because, again, we're also needing to protect ourselves. We'll never lie or be deceptive. But if there's another angle to take, let's say a video that shows us in better, a more favorable light, why would we not go that route, right? Especially when we're talking about a video being so important, especially with litigation, right? So if a picture is worth 1,000 words, what is a video? It's that sort of thing. So any questions? It's a shorter section, but a lot there. Any questions on care or any other element to incident response?
Lance, this might be a separate call, but is Ideal 3, who is that? Is that somebody on behalf of Sky Zone or IH? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not IH. It's on behalf of Sky Zone. They were, for the longest while, they were just like our camera vendor, or they would check our cameras. Like when we went through Glow initiatives, we had to send it to Ideal 3. They're a third party. Is that not correct, Wade? They're just a third party. They're not tied to Sky Zone outside of that, right?
Yeah, that's correct. They're they handle all the risk, mediating the risk conversations with injured guests and all that. I think they're a vendor of the insurance carrier. They also do Slick City as well. So
wonderful. Does that help you out, Kevin?
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. That's a great question. I'm throwing this Ideal 3 around, and where are these guys, right? You would think it's 3 guys, and it's the Ideal 3 guys for the job, but it's not just 3 guys. So you'll get a claim adjuster. They'll reach out. They escalate through there, and yeah, they're that third party, but they are working on our behalf. And so the information we give them is the information they use. So great question. All right, incident reporting, a new section of the call. And again, I know I moved through the incident response somewhat quick. If at any time you have any questions about it, once again, that can come up here later on. That's totally fine. So incident reporting, we need 100% accuracy. Why? Well, it's the right thing to do, first and foremost, but this is all discoverable. As I mentioned, we need accuracy with our incident reporting. So some things. Having it be complete, factual, timely, and accurate. Filling out all the spaces, all the areas. This is an example here of Jolt. But hey, when we think of incident reporting, I always suggest, I think it's a best practice, although we like to do the digital world. What's really nice is when we do the paper incident form, it allows us to do a few different things. It's actually twofold benefit. First, it's a quick and easy way for the park manager to have handwritten notes on the spot and not to rely on any technical challenges or issues that surface with entering the information digitally using a tablet. Secondly, it's not the final submission. It allows then information to be edited for accuracy before the final submission into PlayerLink or even into Jolt. I know this may be confusing. We're talking about going digital all day, every day, and yet here's a paper-based piece of the puzzle. Well, it's paper-based because it's a great first thing to work with, having that paper form. That way, then we can dial it up to that final piece, which is in the digital format, either through PlayerLink or Jolt. And it's worth mentioning once again, you know, it's critical that the statements that are that we're submitting in final form are based on fact and not opinion. And as such, it's important for the GM or AGM in a park to review the statements before submitting it into the PlayerLink or Jolt. But because of this timeline getting so condensed, especially with Reds, with being within a shift, right? The start of a shift to the end of a shift by said manager, I could see the paper-based piece almost falling to the wayside. And, well, maybe naturally it will, just because we're reporting right then, right there. And the nice thing about it, with us doing it in that tight of a timeline, we're less likely to have fuzziness of memory because we're right there. It just happened. You know, yes, emotions might be high, but we can even break away for a moment long enough to submit that somewhere quiet, whatever it may be, to kind of finally look over everything before we hit complete and we put it where it's supposed to be, whether in Jolt or PlayerLink.
I'd just like to
Go ahead.
I'd just like to add, just to reiterate the fact that Reds have to be done before the close of the day. So last night, in one of Michael's parks, Michael called me last night, like, hey, we had an incident, whatever, just confirm it has to be done. Yep, it has to get done. So that the AM had to stay, get all the stuff loaded and completed so he could submit it, because they're very direct with us that they have to be within hours, if not minutes, of the incident being or happening for a red, that they have to be submitted. So we don't want to carry it into the next day. So just want to be clear with everybody that that's what has to be done.
Absolutely. And that's great. And on the flip side, you know, and in a pub park level, if say we had this happen over the weekend, two of my parks had issues with PlayerLink, and don't you know, they were Reds, and you know, this was a recent change, and we couldn't get to the second page of the reporting form. And so you can imagine my trying to get everyone to have that speed and that accuracy and getting it done, and then yet the tool's not working. You know, it's a two-way street. We also want to have that out there and done in a timely, accurate fashion. But we also need our equipment working at the level it's supposed to. And so that was sort of it was a great conversation I had with our newly appointed RVA, Jim. I was having that with him just a couple days ago in a park, just having that back and forth. And he understood that, yeah, there needs to be urgency on the end of the supplier, in this case, the vendor that supports us, to get us the tools we need to work like they're supposed to. But like anything else, it's let's control what we're able to control. We can't control everything, but let's control what we have at our disposal. In that case, I told the parks that had those little Reds, store that stuff today, right now, right? Do our part. Have all those page 2 items, the video, the waiver, all those items that are needing to be stored on our behalf. So then as soon as that thing is up, we can put it in there. I'll also say this. When we report a red, if it was incompleted, and this happened to me recently, I then completed it, they will reach out like it's an actual incident being reported in the way of a litigation, a lawsuit letter, whatever it might be. They will report out in short order and ask for those that information to be dropped into a Dropbox that they provided. It moves very fast. And they're also going to ask, well, why did it take months or whatever to complete it? Even if at that time I made my follow-up call, I did everything to the old format, they're going to ask those questions, and they're going to want some sort of an answer, right? So it needs to be complete, factual, timely, and accurate within that shift, just like Wade said. Details matter. Yes, no, safety questions, staff to guest ratios. There's a number of items here, guys, that we fill out, and it must be thorough. Describing the incident, yes. Not making a medical diagnosis. It's how it happened, where it happened, nature of impact, what attraction was that happened. It's not where we are talking about things like we're doctors. None of us are. And even if you're trained, I've had this many a time. I've had people work for me. Well, I'm training to be a nurse or whatever. Hey, still, it's Sky Zone. It's Slick City. You're not noting, well, that was a compound fracture of the fibula or whatever it might be. No, we don't do that, right? So nature of impact, nature of injury, those are pull down windows. But where you have those open areas, those open spaces, it's facts, guys. It's to the point. It's not going into exhaustive detail that can be mined for hours by potentially someone down the road in the way of litigation, a lawsuit, you name it, right? So please describe things in a very pointed way, a very direct way. Incident reporting, witness statements. This is a very helpful piece of our incident reporting. It's a valuable tool. Like I said, it's an injury. If an injury turns into a claim, ideally it would consist of 3 different witness statements. Now that 3 is largely tied to reds and severe reds, 3 or more even. But even with yellows, getting 3 is very helpful. 3 is always better than 2, as long as they're quality ones. And so let's speak about that for a moment. Team member that was accountable is going to be one of them. The one that was accountable to the attraction where the injury took place. So they should have had their eyes on it, right? They're engaged. Even in a CAV model setting, they are the first one that should be able to report that they are reporting on that in the way of a witness statement. This is what occurred. They should describe the actual injury, how it happened, and the circumstances surrounding it. The park manager or shift lead. Now I know some of you are saying, well, what if I was the park manager and I happen to be the one that was the attraction monitor? I hear you, right? So then you may be only getting one witness statement from the park response team. But in this case, let's say the team member was able to respond, do a witness statement. The park manager or shift lead who handled the injury, they also filled it out, how it was handled, the EMS response, that sort of thing, right? Any other surrounding circumstances. And then a third party person. This is someone who saw it. And what's really important is this is a non-biased individual. I know it's challenging to ask someone who was just kind of standing from afar or standing close to the situation and having to kind of have that, kind of moment, that Q&A with them, but it's really important. Why someone who's unbiased? Well, not a sibling, not someone who came with the group, for sure not a parent in that case, because, well, you want someone non-biased. In the case of this, we've already had 2 biased individuals. And I say biased with quotation marks, but it could be seen that way, right? A team member and a park manager. They're on behalf of the park. A third-party person who's unbiased, this is someone who is, well, they were playing dodgeball. Didn't come with them, wasn't a sibling, wasn't a parent, just a third-party person. And no, they didn't have to see the entirety of it from start to finish, from the moment the guest walked in to the moment they left. Or we would never get a witness statement, right? They just had to see some part of it, or even they heard it, they overheard it. That third-party person having an accurate, and I'm saying heard it, not heard it minutes to hours later. It's not a neighbor, that sort of thing, right? It's someone who was there on the scene when it happened. They may not saw all of what happened, but they report on what they did see or hear happening at the time when it occurred, right? And that's witness statements must be inputted directly into the incident report and must only be written by the team member. So even though we get a third-party person doing it, it's being written by one of us within the team, within the park. It's not being written by the guest. That's really important too. You're almost reporting it that way. What's your point? What are you saying? You're writing it down. You're capturing things like when the incident occurred, what you were doing at the time, what you heard about, and from whom. This isn't storytelling. This isn't some exhaustive thing. Then again, this is factual. It's to the point. It's almost bullet pointed at this point, right? What happened, what you did, where the incident happened. If they don't know what to put there in certain areas, they don't put it, right? And this witness statement is going to be seen, and actually read by IDEAL 3, especially in the case of a red or a severe red. And so that is incident reporting in a nutshell. That form is made available to each and every one of you. If you have any questions about this, we can definitely talk about it here towards the back end of our time. Incident reporting, video, photo requirements. Green guys, footage is not required. Again, I know it seemed a little murky in the green territory here, but again, footage is not required except at the discretion of the GM where deemed necessary. Best practices, if you really believe a green is actually a yellow, it probably is. So make it a yellow, right? Footage from a yellow would be 1 to 2 camera angles for 3 minutes before and 3 minutes after the injury. Upload the footage to PlayerLink. Or in the case of Slick City, Jolt. Red, footage from 1 to 2 camera angles for 3 minutes before, 3 minutes after injury, uploaded to PlayerLink or Jolt if EMS is involved, including footage until EMS leave the park with the injured guest. This must be uploaded to Google Drive. In addition, 2 minutes of footage of the guest checking in at the waiver station. There will be other items asked for when it goes to red. and they follow suit. I'm telling you, it's fast, it's furious. You're asked to put that information at least on site at the park. They just want to know that in written form, hey, we have this information. If it ever gets to the point where we need to, from a storage standpoint, be able to produce that, we have it at the ready. And there's a lot of discussion right now, especially in the world of Sky Zone, around how much video we have. And I don't want to get too far into that because, well, in all of our parks, I believe we're at 365. That's a year's worth of footage. And, well, that's how it's always been. But there are changes coming. But in our parks presently, I believe everyone should be at 365. And honestly, we're pulling this footage from the moment it happens. Let's store it on site. Let's have it ready to go for if at one point down the road, we need to produce it on behalf of Ideal 3, right? Severe Reds, similar, very similar to Reds. Again, we may be asked to produce anything from the guest, the entirety of their visit practically, right? From when the guest was in the park. In terms of pictures, though, a picture should be taken of the attraction area where the injury took place for all red and yellow injuries. It's to be taken right after the incident and attached to the incident report. Pictures are only to be taken of the site where the injury occurred. Do not take photos of an injured guest. Do not take photos of their injury. So that's really important. I was just in a park just the other day where we were talking about the foam levels and how it should be 110% filled. And this park, it was probably about 90%. They said there's a reason why they ask for a picture, right, of an area after something occurs, right? They want to know the state in which it occurred, right? The setting in which the injury took place. So this is important, right? That we don't take pictures of the injury or the injured guest, and that the area in which it occurred, well, we can stand up and say, yes, the area was prim, it was proper, it was to the way it was when it happened. Park alerts. These are emails. Park alert at ihmanagementco.com. It's an email we use, and we do this within 12 hours, or you get a response from someone within the 12 hours. Park alerts are used in the case of examples like police call the park, attraction breaks, flight disturbance, an attraction is down, right? I know that's attraction breaking, but extremely upset guests, closing early, opening late, facility problems, electric, water, sewer, boil alert, inspection of any kind, fire, health, county, damage to your facility, a hole in the wall, fire, flood, you name it. And I think we covered everything here, but if there's some concern, maybe I should be alerting them being, say, myself, Michael, Wade, Bree. Again, you think of the comm center. These individuals are speaking on your behalf. When someone calls in, they're asking a question. When they ring into, say, St. Louis, they're actually ringing into, yes, St. Louis, but they're speaking on behalf of Madison Park or Milwaukee or Canton, right? Just to name a few of my parks. They are you, and they need to be up to speed with what's going on in your park. And so that park alert must be put through. And again, park alert at ihmanagementco.com. Risk at ihmanagementco.com is another email we use often. And this is office use only. If that's not clear, it's clearly defined here in red. Office use only. Level 2 and level 3 incidents, otherwise known as yellow and reds, include description of incident, photo, video snip, witness statement, guest contact info that's in there. Attorney letters mailed or emailed to park would be a risk at ihmanagementco.com. Media inquiries related to an incident or injury. So incident reporting start to finish, collecting the details, inputting the incident. And again, focus on those reds, must be done on the shift by that shift manager. Who started it, finishes it, same day. Park alert, follow up. Any questions on risk management process at this point? Any questions? I know there's a lot there. I am moving kind of fast, I think. I know, I feel like I'm talking really fast, and there's a lot there, so. Awesome.
Do you have any parks that get the third party person witness statement? Well, like, can acquire that? Well, that's one of the things that I know I've always struggled with acquiring, because by the time the chaos of getting them out the door has happened, because you're just trying to care for that person. Finding that third party person is a needle in a, like, that's never even on my mind, honestly.
Sure,
And
sure.
who knows, especially if you have a packed park.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, that's a great question. That's an excellent question. And I think historically there's been a number of challenges with that third party person. And honestly, I'll be, I think we can all just be very honest on this call. We should be honest. Getting witness statements in general can be challenging, even if it's internally, right? Getting those and getting those in the right fashion with the right kind of wording. And by right wording, I mean just not a play-by-play, this exhaustive detailed thing, but really what we're looking for. It's a great question. And it's a fine line, because when we're getting the witness statement in the moment you said, or you alluded to, it's a packed park, it's busy, we had this incident, and we're trying to take care of the guests. Let's not lose sight of care. We need to be focused on the guests and how they're doing. Ultimately, that's what's going to play out, I think, in favor of us rather than being against us, is how we portray ourselves in those moments. Are we just trying to push something their way? Are we just trying to get pen to paper? Are we just trying to cover our butts? And I've actually seen that come through on SMGs. I've seen that come through for sure on these incident callbacks when I've done it for level reds. It's just a general sense of like, I just feel like they were just trying to protect themselves. I felt not any kind of empathy. More or less, they were too worried about getting quote for quote sued or whatever, right? So it is a fine line. And after all the kind of chaos drops, the emotions have come down, the guest is secured and on his or her way to, say, in the case of a level red, maybe to the hospital. It can be very challenging to get that third party or that third waiver or that third witness statement. I'll just say this. It is something you can role play, is it not? It's something, we talked about it Monday on the call, play in the park, right? Role plays. It's an area you can role play. How do we get this and get this effectively? How do we do this more often than not? In the case of, getting two, in this case, a manager or a court monitor or an action monitor, hey, we got two. Two's great. Why is it nice to get the third party one? Well, like I said earlier, because it's not a stacked deck. There's other individuals outside of just people wearing the Sky Zone or Slick City polo or team member shirt that's speaking on our behalf. But when it's all said and done, you may not get it. A lot of times it is very challenging to get it. We can role play it, yes, get better at asking the right questions when it happens, and just kind of taking note of who is in the general area. Sometimes it looks like actually going to another area of the park for that person who's still jumping with us or sliding with us and saying, hey, I know you just saw that occur. If you don't mind, I just wanted to ask a few questions. This is just part of our process. Could I just ask you a few questions about what you saw and what you heard, right? There's a better way to do it, yes. Is it foolproof? No. Is it challenging? Probably every single time it's challenging. So anyone else on the call? I know, Kevin, you've been around for a long while, former Sky Zoner, back with us again, did Urban Air for a bit. If you don't mind me putting you on the spot, and Wade, for sure, you can always respond as well. Any pro tips on getting witness statements that you've come across?
No, I would do exactly what you recommended. I mean, that's just having that quick conversation with the guest, letting them know this is, just for our internal use, and, they will not be necessarily involved at all further than just a witness statement. But I did have a quick question regarding incident reports, and I'm sure many managers have experienced this question from guests, or if not, they will, in the future. Just to jog my memory and the Innovative Heights procedure, as far as a guest asking for a copy of an incident report, which I know isn't allowed, what would be the next step of where we would direct them to? Would it be a regional or ideal 3, or letting them know that somebody will be following up with them to answer their questions, just so I know, from standpoint of Innovative Heights?
Yeah, great question. And you're absolutely right. Yes, we don't hand that out. But obviously, if they're asking for the reasons they're asking, it's an important piece. They're asking because, well, there's potential there for a loss of some sort on our end. Wade, I know you were having an exchange about something very similar to this, well, within the last 24 hours, right? How would you like us to respond? Previously, it was, say, regional like myself, an area manager, but now so much is being vetted and put through Ideal 3. So what's your thoughts on that?
Clarify your question. Are we still talking about the witness statement or just the process in general?
The incident report. A lot of times, with my experience, once in a while you'll get the guests who will ask for a copy of it. And, in the past, I've used best practices like not even filling out a paper copy in front of them so that they aren't prompted with that question. We simply just, take down the information, name, number, and then go in our office to fill out the incident reports to try and avoid that conversation with the guest.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is probably the best recommended way to do it. I guess the crux of the question is if somebody asks, hey, I want a copy of all of that stuff, that's where we say, well, we need to submit it all. And then you can give if you're contacted by a guest, that is the process. And Lance, you haven't covered that yet, to fill in the player link of guest contact. Then we'll let Ideal 3 take it from there. So the best thing is just to say, yes, I'm just getting your information like you said. You've requested it, and then you can fill out another player link thing that the guest has requested contact, and then just let them handle it. But don't give them anything.
If I may also add in, similar to what you were saying, I do not fill any kind of report out in front of the guest. What I do is I really just ask, hey, what happened? And I also get the guest's name because practically all of the information you need, you can get out of their waivers. So if you know their name, you can look it all up without having to ask that information right then and there. But I would also confirm if it is a minor, I would also confirm who the guardian is because sometimes people bring friends' kids and stuff like that, just so you can confirm the name is actually correct for who's there. But just a little tip of something I learned coming into this new system as well.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. Excellent. Excellent questions. Excellent questions. Piggybacking to Stephanie, did that help you at all with the witness statements? I mean,
yeah, it did.
Okay.
It's just something to be more cognitive of as we're jumping into these incidents.
I just some thoughts on the incident report, trying to gather that is, obviously the manager on duty should be handling the guest if it's elevated like that, but training our leads then that if that's the case and the manager's like, okay, I'm now taking over. Now you as the lead, your job is to get witness statements. And having that kind of trained into them to know that now becomes their de facto point position is you're on that while I'm doing this.
Yep. Yeah, divide and conquer.
Perfect.
Yeah, I used to know one thing I did really enjoy about the stickers back in the day, if I just moment of reflection here, was so much of the information when you had a working Boca printer in the World of Sky Zone was on said sticker, and you could almost, versus just sort of doing this reporting element of like, what's your name, all this information you're trying to gather, and it feels very it can feel uncaring even because you're just filling this stuff out and it's like you're just at that point you feel like you're like they're a number, right? A number in a system and a potential number that could challenge us on something later on down the road. I love to be able to pull that information from like the sticker, were they a C, right? What's their name, all that, right? And I could do that, and I can do that almost indiscreetly. Now with the wristbands, obviously it's more challenging, but yeah, I love what Kevin said about doing that kind of behind the closed doors. And at that point, the emotion's removed. There's been a little bit of time and space, but not a whole lot from a point of like things got fuzzy. It's like, no, it's still very much, in my memory. It just happened not too long ago. And then what Wade said, really dividing and conquering, having the lead, being skilled in that area. I think it's a great area to role play in. And not that we're going to ever cook the books or, make it so that it's doctored in any way, but it's a skill set, just if anything, because, well, the more you practice it, the better you get at it. And so kind of working through that just from a risk element standpoint, maybe that's what you do at a team member meeting. Hey, you focus on that for a moment. Hey guys, we get witness statements. It's what we do. And there's a right way, yes, and then there's ways that are not that great. And so this is sort of that witness statement piece that could be trained down at some point, right? Within our team member meetings. So awesome, guys. Very good and great questions. Call number 5 has been a doozy. It's been great. So awesome.
One more quick question, Lance. Does Ideal 3 only follow up with reds or yellows as well?
Just the reds.
Okay.
Yep.
Are we required to follow up at all as far as the yellows, or no?
It's a great question. Ideal 3 doesn't. I don't know if we've covered this in depth on our end, Wade. Doesn't sound like we're covering that. We're, I haven't been following up on those because I thought that was just sort of dead in the water. We don't do yellows as far as callbacks go.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we still need to get some clarification on from corporate on what that process is, because they do not want us talking to reds anymore. Which the way our process in Innovative Heights works is, and Kevin, you're probably going back to the older days where as GM you'd call back the guest. We don't want the parks calling anybody back. Michael and Lance we're doing all the callbacks. Just to get that off the plate and have one point of contact, which is also why Michael, Lance also are the ones that submit the final player league deal, just to give it one last look over to make sure it's all good. Yeah, as far as the callbacks of the yellows, we need to clarify that. So Lance and I will get back to that one.
Yeah, I actually wrote that down earlier, and I just wrote it down again as a reminder because I just got a response from Jim, our RBA, on something I asked him about risk this morning. But yeah, I reflected on that as I was updating some of these slides. I'm like, yellow is kind of that, uncharted territory now. They don't want us calling, but it doesn't sound like they're calling. So does no one call? Because that's kind of where we're at right now. So we will get an answer, and that's a great question. Thank you. It's awesome.
So something that I've started doing is just to let the family know that we do care, is I give them our direct MOD line to update us if they do decide to leave. And I feel like they do call us and they update us, and that way we can update it for you guys to put it in the system.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, because whether or not they go through, at the end of the day, and it was a sticking point for me for a while. It still is. It doesn't happen as often now as back in the day. They would like yesterday, didn't happen yesterday, but it could have been. A guest is going to reach out to us at some point, especially if there's a concern. And you taking that extra measure, I think he has a pro tip. It's different from them just looking up our website, pulling the broad number to say, in this case, Sky Zone Grand Rapids, reaching out, going through the comm center chat, and then it'll end up in WhatsApp. And you know how WhatsApp is. You step away for a day and there's 200 WhatsApps. It's liable to get missed. So-and-so reached out because their kid got injured, and it could be missed altogether. I think you've created more of a direct connect, and it kind of heightens our senses to it, and it makes it more immediate. And I think it makes it more personable, honestly, and caring for that matter. So yeah, I don't necessarily see an issue with that. Do you, Wade? You think that's the best?
No.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, great pro tip. Great pro tip. All right. Any other questions or observations at this point?
From something from Kevin from a minute ago, something I have had happen a handful of times is guests calling saying they do need to get either a witness statement or the actual incident report because the hospital is requiring it, whether it's for insurance reasons or not. And so what I'm catching from earlier is that's to be dialed up to Ideal 3.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yep. And you would dial it up to me. In the case, obviously, I'm your regional. I saw every bit need to be in the fold. That's important, right? That I'm aware, and we can obviously kind of detail that out a little further. It's just another element, but it's not a big element. It's just adding me into that mix, or just letting me know, and then I could, bring Ideal 3 into it. Even this morning, I was talking with Joanna Otley, who is overseeing a lot of our claims and adjusts things for us on our behalf and speaks on our behalf. I was even asking her a question this morning about, She sent something in for Funny Enough Your Park, and it wasn't anything, you know, out of sorts. It was just, I finally reported on a red that happened some time ago. I just hit complete eventually. I hit complete, and now they're following up on it, right? In that case, she didn't copy you on the email she sent out for further clarification on the items being put aside in case it did turn to something. And I asked her for clarification. Will you include the GM in the mix here? Or, because in some cases they have, in other cases they haven't. And I'm just trying to get them to, you know, do it the same across the board. So, no, it's a great question. Awesome. All right. Any other questions? All right. Last but not least, this is a short section because the follow-up is largely not on our laps any longer. It wasn't even all that much on our laps before, but clear follow-up. Now, level yellow, internally 24 hours. We want to have this all locked, sealed, ready to go. Guests could not return to jumping after the incident, may require further medical attention. We talked about that before. Don't want any blurriness around this. A yellow is a yellow in the way that they could not return. This is not someone who can return to jump or slide because they were coming down to the last 5 minutes in their jump or slide time. And don't you know, well, I would have went back to jump or slide, but I ran out of time. That's not a yellow, especially if it was truly a green. And what I always like to use at my disposal when I come up against that situation is, hey, I realize you're up in 5 minutes or so. You seem like you're icing something, but say hypothetically, if you had another half hour to jump or another hour to slide, would you? Is that something you would be doing? Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's what I would be doing. But obviously I only got 5 more minutes, right? Usually they, at that point, want to, you know, well, maybe that guy's going to give me an extra 30 minutes or an hour, but it helps me, and it helps me really ultimately understand whether that's truly a yellow or a green. And most of the time it's a green. A level red, though, again, like I said, it's as soon as possible within that shift. If that's not been made known here, let it be known, right? It's in that shift. Who started it? They wrap it up. We got to get it done. And that's a severe injury requiring immediate medical attention. Of course, not just level reds, but severe reds. General rules with follow-up, guys. There's a lot here. This is a example of a guest insert follow-up form on PlayerLink. A lot to be filled in. Most important, just a note here, we're never going to get defensive about any one thing. And yet we never assume, admit a fault, or apologize for anything that has happened. And we never provide any kind of insurance information or third-party information. We never provide any kind of information, waivers, incident reports, witness statements, the proper languages. This is used for eternal, it's our own internal documents. Again, I wouldn't go so far as to, you know, say lie and say, well, this stuff gets shipped off to somewhere else and I don't see it ever again. But truly it does get shipped off. It gets sent out. You hit submit, it's off to the races. But we all know we could obtain it if we needed to. So you don't necessarily need to go there. I would just say it's legal information. You know, it's what, or I wouldn't lead with legal information, but it's our own internal documents meant for us. And yeah, sorry, I can't provide any of that information because of privacy laws. That's perfectly applicable here. And for us to know, right, hey, a subpoena is required before releasing any and all above information. Again, we're not going to challenge them with that. Well, hey, you know, you got to get a subpoena, right? We're not going to challenge them with that. But again, sorry, hey, I can't provide any of that information because of privacy laws. It's for our own internal use. And then taking stock of how things go from there and then bubbling that up to your area or above park leader. And at that point, we can bubble that up as needed to Ideal 3. Never provide any direct phone numbers for legal, ops, or risk management team members. That goes without saying, but it's there for a reason. And never say anything that the injured party could use against you, as they will often twist and alter your words to fit their narrative, right? Less is more in this case. And also, I'll bubble this back up to always assume that if you are, say, getting that call into Grand Rapids and you're Hannah and they're calling to let you know that, well, it may be nefarious in nature, hopefully not. That you always assume that the conversation is being recorded, and take some notes of the conversation, keep them on file, especially if things are bubbling up to something maybe more severe. That would be wise to write those things down and even document that internally on our end. So those are some general rules. I know there's a lot there. But again, I can make this, and I will make this entirely available to you after the call the slides. Media guidelines. We're nearing the end of our voyage here, guys. Please follow these guidelines. Do not speak with any news media. Do not allow news media to film in the park. Do not acknowledge or answer any social media, email, or other online questions in writing about issues, including but not limited to injuries, stories, incidents, guest concerns. Direct all news media inquiries to media@skyzone.com. That's for SkyZone. risk@ihmanagementco.com for all parks. Contact media at skyzone.com for guidance on responding to social media and email inquiries. And this is important to note. You know, especially a lot of times for our brand new action monitors, court monitors, they may be asked what seems to be a benign question, and it may be just that, benign. Someone going, even our newly acquired, newly brought in team members will say, hey, when they're interviewing, yeah, I got a question, you know, before I get the job. Do a lot of people get injured here? That may come out, and it may be entirely benign. Having responses, although it may seem very canned in response, we need to be aligned with our responses. Well, yeah, I mean, like any industry, there's going to be things that happen, but we have a lot of things in place so that our guests can have an awesome, healthy, fun time in our parks. And so we do deploy that on a regular basis. Surely things do happen, but hey, I myself wouldn't be doing this if things were happening every day in the way of injury. So yeah, they happen, but we have a lot of fail safes in place so to ensure that people have an awesome, healthy, fun time here at our park. So having those seemingly canned responses can be needed in a moment like that because things can be twisted and pulled apart and used against us. So any questions? And my hope is after doing all this, you're more comfortable, not left with more questions or, dare I say, concerns about risk management. But we do need to have a healthy relationship with this thing called risk management. It's too important to not have a healthy relationship with it. So any questions, guys? Awesome. Thank you, guys. It's been great being with you guys. Next steps, and I mean that, you know, I said at the top of the call, this is usually not a very interactive call. It can be kind of boring, whatever, or, you know, a little dry. It's risk. People either find it to be dry or they're just kind of afraid of it and they're kind of pulled back. They pull back from it. And so they don't interact as a result of that. But you guys were go-getters. This was a very lively time together, which was great. Probably best group yet. And no, I did not say that to the prior groups in February, but I appreciate it, guys. Lots of great questions. As questions come up, you can reach out to myself, Wade, Michael, if he's your area manager. You can reach out to any one of us at any time. And we will, if we don't have the answer, we will work very hard and fast to get you an answer so that, well, you can operate with a sense of confidence around this area of risk management. So you'll complete a Google form quiz. I will say right now, read the answers that are given in their entirety. I don't think there's anything I missed that's reflected in the quiz. If for whatever reason I did, I do apologize in advance. Like I said, there's been some changes and some tweaks from February. I did make some quick changes to reflect that, hopefully in its entirety in the Google form, but that's going to be taken by you. I would say do it in short order, like right as we wrap up, because again, it can be a challenging quiz. There are bad answers on there to go with, and there are some good answers, but then there's always one great answer. So although there might be a good answer, go with the great answer that's more complete. There will be a retake if necessary. You have to score 100%. 90% won't do, 95% won't do. Don't let that give you test anxiety. I believe you've been set up, you've been equipped to really get 100% on this. And if you have to take, I will make sure that you are equipped to get 100% on it, because I will provide you with the slides and provide you, dare I say, with the answers. But I want you to pass. This isn't to trick you. It's so you can pass this and know it top to bottom. And then own your own development and do that by reaching out with any questions. Like I said at the top of next steps here, guys, reach out. There is no dumb questions, especially in the area of risk management. We think we've thought of it all. We haven't, right? There's always going to be something of a nuance or wrinkle that we've missed, and one of you have found out. So please ask those questions as they pop up. So I'm going to add right now into our chat the link. Oh, that's the Zoom link. Give me just a moment here. We'll get you rocking and rolling. Like I said, best practice, do this right at the tail end as well. Kind of a challenging quiz. So, all right, that is available to you. If you're in the chat, you can see it. Please click on that when you will, and I will try to get back to you here within the next 24 to 48 hours at most. And hey, if you get 100%, kudos to you. You're winning. If you didn't, that's all right. You will win on the retake, and we'll go from there. Any other questions, guys? Excellent. You guys are too awesome. Too awesome. All right, guys. It's been a joy. It's been a pleasure. Hopefully this was somewhat enjoyable for you, if at the very least informative. And I believe each of you, if you had a 5 on the 1 to 10, hopefully you're closer to a 10. If you were a 10, maybe now you're an 11. And if you're a 1, you're not confused. You're on the call for a reason. We do risk management here at Sky Zone and Slick City, amongst many, many other things with the guest experience. So thank you guys. Take care. Have an awesome Thursday. And yeah, see you soon.
All right. Thanks, Lance.
Of course.
Thank you very much. Have a good one.
Yes. You as well, sir. You as well.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Couldn't get back in here.